I can't tell you how many times I talked to people who had lifted and shifted and were buying their own AWS servers and saying, wow, we did everything exactly right and we went broke. Oh no, I think I'm going to go back on-prem. Well, maybe that's the right way to do it, but maybe the other way to do it is say, admit the technology has changed. And if you're going to get out of the facilities business, why not also get out of the IT business as well? There's where a lot of your costs are. And all those people that were saying we failed in the cloud, what you find out is they didn't move completely. Consequently, they had AWS engineers and on-prem engineers. Somebody, one of the big guys or somebody new you haven't heard from, is going to start buying up power companies. Electricity is what's going to run this next generation of tech, be it AI or crypto or anything else. One word, describe the future of tech in one word, and that word is going to be same. S-A-M-E, same.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Rules of the Game podcast, where we challenge the status quo and dive deep into how technology is reshaping everything, business, society, and even the very nature of reality. Now, today, I am joined by a true legend in the world of VDI, DaaS, and enterprise IT in general, and that is Kevin Goodman. Now, Kevin has had an incredible career in tech, playing a pivotal role in shaping the way we think about virtualization and cloud-based workspaces. Now, he was the co-founder of FSLogix, a groundbreaking company that revolutionized user profile management in virtual environments, so much so that Microsoft acquired him in 2018. But not stopping there, he later joined AWS, bringing his expertise to one of the biggest cloud providers in the world. And now retired, Kevin has a wealth of experience and insights from decades of working at the forefront of enterprise IT. Today, we'll dive into his journey, what he's learned along the way, his thoughts on where VDI and DaaS are headed, and of course, the impact of AI on IT, in business, and even in humanity. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brad, how are you? Good to see you again.
Yes, you too. Now, hey, listen, with an intro like that, boy, I don't know if we can cram all this into 1 hour. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I actually never was a Microsoft employee, though. I bailed on them. Back in the day, it's probably still true today, due to Sarbanes-Oxley, you could only give a CEO, a percentage of what they made the last 5 years when you acquired their company. And I never took a salary at FSLogix. I had prior cashed out with when I sold RTO software to VMware. And there's this other thing called qualified small business stock, in which if you found a company and hold it for 5 years, when you sell it, then you're not subject to capital gains or alternative minimum tax. Thank you very much, Barack Obama. He's the one who put that through. So there was just not an opportunity for me to go and have all of my FSLogix stock turned into Microsoft RSUs and vest over 4 years. So I decided to take a 2-year non-compete instead. And in 2018, I signed over FSLogix, and the rest of the team went there, and most of them were still there. So.
Oh, okay. Well, good. So that was an amazing ride for you. How long was the FSLogix? How did you get into that, and how did that ride go?
So my co-founders were all Symantec developers. And we were very close to doing an OEM, or we may even completed that OEM with Symantec prior to VMware come calling. And so I got to know those guys. I knew they were good guys. I knew they were excellent coders. And I ran into one of the co-founders at VMworld, and we had one of those, what's wrong with this industry talks? And, typically... and somebody ought to do something about it. And that's how we started FSLogix. It was me and 3 guys from Symantec. And it's funny. Some days, Brad, I think all I am is really a recruiter. I put together great teams of really smart people, and then somebody like Microsoft acquires them, and they're still all there to this day. I'm pretty sure most of the engineers that I had at RTO Software either retired because they got to retirement age or still work for VMware to this day. So maybe that's what my true expertise is recruiting really good teams.
Well, that's good because that sort of expertise really never sees retirement. So that means you might still be that visionary coming up with a great idea and recruiting all those folks that have worked with you in the past. Can't wait to see what's coming up next.
I'll tell you what's coming up next. I'm going fishing. It's about to be snapper season. That's what I'm going to do. But maybe something else if as we get into it.
If you do, as you will, go fishing, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of innovation there, at least in technology toward the fishing sort of act, right?
Yeah, well, you know what they say about boats. It's a hole in the water into which you pour money. And if I just would go down to the local shop, I could get fresh fish a lot cheaper than it costs to build it yourself. So we'll see.
I really want to dive back into the FSLogix. So what was it like when you built that company and brought folks together and then, found those first customers? Because, we've both been in this VDI space a long time, where Citrix had come in and created an ecosystem along with VMware and so forth. So you came in, I would imagine, you brought the talent in, created a product. You knew that ecosystem would really they desire, and you executed against that. What's that story?
So, the issue was at the time, and it's always been the same old with virtual desktops, applications, and, user data. And so the very first piece that we put out with FSLogix was image management. It's such a pain, especially back in the days with Citrix of managing all the multiple images. And I remember talking to one customer who went on a year-long effort to reduce their golden images and got down to 62 of them. And the original tech at FSLogix, remember I said these were semantic guys. Who knows file systems better than semantic? So, and even that's where the FS came from. It was file systems logic. Those guys together, we figured out there. So if there was a way to, I still don't like application virtualization. It fusses with the app in a way the vendor doesn't want you to, right? So the original product at FSLogix was anti-virtualization. We hid everything except the application you were using. Consequently, if you were a user that wanted to use Microsoft Dynamics, we allowed you to use Microsoft Dynamics. If you weren't a user, we hid it from you. So the Microsoft Dynamics user didn't have any of that degradation you get with virtualization. And the other users, and we went through all the tests with Microsoft to make sure this was license compliant, right? So you could have one image, and that image would then have all the apps on it, and you would only see yours, I'd only see mine. That was the first one. And then what happened is, you get up into the cloud, and all of a sudden disks are expensive again. And oh no, now we're not just using, the on-premises disks that you paid for once. Now you're renting them. And so we saw the light on the wall, and the next thing we fixed was the profiles. Profiles are a big pain in the neck. And I would tell you, the Microsoft, it was a shame I couldn't go with them because I wasn't done with profiles. It's still not fixed. FSLogix to this day is still, let me see if I can say this right. Read once, write. Read a bunch of times, write to, I don't know, whoever. It used to be whoever was the last writer wins. Now I have no idea who the writer wins is. And, they're doing all these things that I think it should be made multi-user, and because of the cloud, there's some stuff in there. I passed all those thoughts on to Microsoft 5-6 years ago, so it doesn't bother me. When I was at AWS, I really wanted them to fix it because a lot of AWS customers were FSLogix customers.
Exactly. And by the way, you'd think that Microsoft, who owns the OS, would handle a lot of these things, like the file system management as well as antivirus and all these other things. But somehow they just don't, and it creates these offsprings of companies like yours. That's amazing.
You sit around at a cocktail party and people used to ask me what I did for a living. I said, make software to make Microsoft software talk to itself. So hi. And think about it. The Office group is a large enterprise unto itself, and maybe they don't talk to the Azure group as much as they should, or maybe they can't. And and that's perfect for entrepreneurs to fill those gaps.
Oh yeah, I think that's the age old. The company gets big enough, there's islands, they don't necessarily talk. And with it's like we talked earlier, the Citrix world had created that ecosystem out there of opportunities. And oftentimes it was like, this is too expensive to do this. How do we find a new software patch to add on to actually start to cut the cost and hopefully not create a bad, user experience, but to come in and fill a hole. And so profile management and, sort of the app distribution and management thing seemed like two things that were very necessary. There were other companies that came along in the past to do this. What were those?
So, the original one, and we hired one of those employees. The original one came out of the Netherlands, in which they were trying to solve the problem with roaming profiles. And then there were a couple other companies that were formed that were doing it. And I remember when I suggested profiles to my co-founders, that's been done already, not correctly. Yeah. So there's always a room for, new technology to come in there. And what's the favorite word of the Silicon Valley? Disrupt the existing businesses, So there was a bunch of them out there. I'm trying to think of their names right now. Amidio, maybe that was the one that came out of it. There was also Absence and Res and all of those.
Yep. Al Montserrat went over to Res for a while.
Yeah, so here's the thing, though. Simplicity wins. FSLogix was so simple. You don't want to have employees that are subject matter experts in order to get your application to run on Citrix. If you do, then you're really never going to be ahead of the curve.
So when you first started selling, how did these customers react to this? And by the way, that business years ago was just all on-prem, right? And so there was that on-prem attachment that you were working on. And then, boy, recently now there's a lot of cloud-based. Does the architecture lend itself to cloud, or is it a rewrite?
So the profiles lent itself to cloud, but the way we did this, and this is key, right? So there are metrics that you have in perfmon. One of them is disk queue length. Whatever a disk queue length is, it shouldn't be more than twice the number of processors you have in your server on-prem. So we would walk in, and so this is a technology side. There's also a marketing side of it. I'd walk into a customer and I'd look at their perfmon counters of their server that was holding their profiles, right? And I'd go, yeah, our software can help you. See that number? You have 4 processors and that number's up around 80. Here's the reason why your logins are slow. And so with that knowledge, we'd install an evaluation. Sure enough, it would cut their login time down in fractions, because of it would stop the technology of virtual profiles would stop the need for opening a file handle for every single, I'm getting technical now, but every item on your desktop has to be opened across the network when it's residing over there on an SMB share. And FSLogix figured a way to tunnel that in such a way that you only open 2 file handles, one for the actual directory and then one for the, we set up as like a network drive. And in doing that, it just sped up so many things. I remember there was some of the smart guys in the industry at a Brian Madden conference said, I got 99 profiles and profiles are every one of them. 99 problems and profiles are every one of them, or some story like that.
Right.
And basically what they wanted to tell you is don't use roaming profiles, don't use redirected folders. And the answer is let's solve the original problem is you're opening a file handle for every one of them. Stop doing that. Now, what I thought was exciting and what really made FSLogix is that sounds pretty simple. Anybody can go into Disk Manager and create a network drive, put their profiles on it, and voila. I've also got an FSLogix killer. I remember, I also wish I had a nickel for every time someone was coming out with an FSLogix killer. But again, remember my guys were file system guys, which means they were writing kernel mode drivers. And what they did deep down, and it still does it to this day, I surmise, is they opened a local file handle for when they opened that directory. Then they went and opened up the network directory and put the two together, right? And synced them. What's that mean? That means every Windows app thought it was talking to a local drive. Why is that important? All the other guys who came out with the FSLogix killers, a bunch of stuff started failing, like Dropbox, like what's the Office equivalent? OneDrive. All those failed because they don't work over network drives, right? All of a sudden you opened up your Word document and it said, hey, this is on a remote file. Be careful. We opened it up in read-only mode. All this kind of crap. And so then people said, well, that didn't work. Let me try FSLogix. Problem solved. And the next thing you know, we're getting all of that business for that one simple idea that the file system guys had was the big difference between all the products. So, you know, technology wins in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could pull that off is if you know the file systems well enough to do that trick.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's why you guys won that. And that makes a lot of sense. So now it's funny because you were running the company, but you seem to know, how the code was written as well.
I, used to be a developer and I wrote kernel mode drivers for RTO software. All of that RTO software was kernel mode space. And so what happens is you get out there, you know what to do, but coding's a young man's game. So I had to go out and find some kids to do it for me. I knew what to do. I just needed guys who also knew how to code so we could get them to agree on doing it, So, and once I understood it, we used to have a saying, now it's just typing, once they realized how, we got the idea across, then it was just typing and coding. So.
Well, we're going to get into this conversation on the second half of the podcast, talking about how AI is influencing various things and jobs and coding and things like that. So that's certainly a big impact in changing the way that you had done this before. Now, so hey, let's talk about the fun part here. Microsoft must have got interested in what you were up to, and you had a conversation with them, and boom, before you know it, 2018, they acquire you. Tell that story.
Okay, so we caught the attention of the Office group, right? There are customers, and this is pretty much how it always happens when a small company gets acquired, right? They just happen to be in the right place at the right time. No, a large company, and I'm talking companies that have 100,000 VDI users, go to Microsoft and said, why am I paying for FSLogix? This is baloney. You guys should fix this. This is a bug in your system. I'm not paying them. You pay for it. And you get enough of those complaining, and then you catch the attention of the Microsoft guys higher up. Then they reach out to you. Another thing that helped that is, remember I said semantic? Well, all those semantic guys used to be Novell guys who are doing the file system over at Microsoft, ex-Novell guys. Mm. So here the guys over doing the file system at Microsoft, and they can go to the guys who are doing the buying, and then they go to the file system guys to vet it, for the due diligence, and they all go, yeah, this stuff works. So you get in this really good cycle there where all of a sudden, we're in close with the Microsoft guys. So then they're putting our stuff in the lab, they're testing it. Meanwhile, Court Dev gets an idea on it, and then they come and this part will be interesting for any entrepreneur who's ever selling his company, right? What the Court Dev at Microsoft we weren't their first acquisition, nor their largest, obviously, right? They're buying LinkedIn for $1 billion. They know what they're doing. They separated our, we had VC from Atlanta. They separated our, 2 VC in a pickup truck from Atlanta and said, hey, you guys really want to do business with us. You're not going to make much money on this FSLogix deal, but now you get to put Microsoft in your window as one of the ones that you've sold the company to. So when you're touting new entrepreneurs, they're going to see that and want to come and get money from you. And so the fun part was we probably had to fight our VC who were ready to roll over and just hand it to them. Come on, guys, this stuff has some value. Let's at least, get the whisper number. The good thing about having people, in Microsoft is they said, well, we're going to offer you this, but the whisper number is, And so, I had to fight the VC not to take their first offer when we got the term sheet, I actually haven't talked to any of those VC in a long time, but the one guy, I thought he was going to wet his pants when he saw the term sheet, was probably bigger by a large factor of any deal he had done before. And I was like, okay, kids, calm down, let's get this deal done, but calm down. Yeah, so fun is not the right word.
Oh, got it. Yeah, but it's interesting because when you're in the crosshairs and they come in and take a look, do they decide, hey, we can hire a bunch of engineers and code this out also? Now, did they feel they didn't have time, like trading time for money, and so they thought they could talk the acquisition price down and pop it in, and that would be better?
So, yeah, here's a tip for all you entrepreneurs out there. You really get the idea in your head that you have to tout that your team is experts and they're the best coders ever and they just whip this stuff out because they're so smart. Now, what we told Microsoft is, well, we've been working on this over 10 years for a long time. Even before we put the company together, we had to do all this stuff. And gosh, was it agonizing and it took forever. And I hope we can explain to you how it's, because otherwise you're going to say, okay, let's see, FSLogix, you got 30 engineers. We could afford to put 120 engineers on it and get it out in 6 months. You don't want, I once had an entrepreneur tell me, oh yeah, we wrote this stuff in the weekend. And I went, well, I'm not going to invest in your company then because somebody else could do it in 2 weekends and eat your lunch, So yeah, there is always a trade-off for that. But most of the time it's time, right? Microsoft wants to close a bunch of business before the end of the year. You know what? Is there an earthquake going on? I feel my desk shaking. Is my camera moving for you?
Yeah, a little bit there. Where are you geographically?
I'm in sunny Florida, so maybe it's a hurricane. Actually, I say sunny, but it's not sunny. Yeah. Anyway.
Bus drove by or something, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I got to get out of this trailer that I live in and maybe get a real home.
So that was that. You negotiated your way in. You shared the value, of the code and the company and so forth. And in 2018, in they go. And that gives you some breathing room before you jumped in with AWS. Now, in this time here, and by the way, before and after this, you're very familiar with the VDI industry, how Citrix kind of brought up app publishing, and then VMware got into, desktop virtualization along with Citrix and so forth. And then, of course, there's been this big transition now in the last 4 or 5 years of taking, the on-prem infrastructure and then relocating it into various clouds that are available out there. So tell me what you think about that world of VDI to DaaS and the transition that's going on right now. What are your feelings there? Because, some companies, when they pop up into the cloud, they don't have a lot of experience, and they kind of get some VM sprawl going and some surprise bills at the end of the month, and they repatriate everything back into the data center, and they go, I know this, I'm comfortable here. But when you really do the math, and if you do it right, you can actually really take advantage of pause, resume, just in time, just enough, all the stuff you can do in multiple clouds, higher availability, lower costs, and various things like that. So what about this transition that's going on now? What are you seeing?
Well, you described it very, very well. There are those that want to get out of the facilities business, right? And so, I'm paying for this data center, and it keeps prices going up, cost of electricity, stuff like that. I'd like to get out of the facilities business. So what they think is the best way to do that is to lift and shift, right? Let's just move it all over and start renting this. VDI, though, is a little persnickety, right? Because on premises, when you have sunk cost on those servers, what used to be called XenApp, the multi-session version of Citrix, makes perfect sense. I got 100 servers, and I'm going to spread all my users across them, and I'll scale up or down based on a bunch of metrics. And if that holds 1,000 users, super. And if 500 log off, so what? I already paid for all the hardware. I'm already paying for all of this. You move that up to the cloud, though, and it gets expensive real quick. And so Amazon was one of the first ones to do what I would call the VDI version, single user with workspaces. And that user, and then Amazon's got some pretty cool technology with, like what you said, with suspend, resume. You can pay for that hourly or by the month, and you end up there, can you achieve significant cost savings. I can't tell you how many times I talked to people who had lifted and shifted and were buying their own AWS servers and saying, wow, we did everything exactly right, and we went broke. Oh no, I think I'm going to go back on-prem. Well, maybe that's the right way to do it, but maybe the other way to do it is admit the technology has changed. And if you're going to get out of the facilities business, why not also get out of the IT business as well? There's where a lot of your costs are. And all those people that were saying we failed in the cloud, what you'd find out is they didn't move completely. Consequently, they had AWS engineers and on-prem engineers, and they're two different types of people. So now they're paying twice as much for the labor. And, be it whether it's, and Microsoft now has Windows 365, so they've realized this is the way to go. Prior to that, remember they had AVD and Windows 10 multi-session? Well, a guy that used to be on staff at FSLogix did the math and said, in a random setting, 95% of the users have to log off to be able to reclaim 50% of the VMs, right? So you're going to sit there, and even if you only did 3 users for Windows 10 multi-session, you're going to sit there with them being underutilized. So there still is a place for multi-session in the cloud, but it's that scenario where you have 3 shifts, right? So manufacturing going 3 shifts, or healthcare 3 shifts, in which you're going to be fully utilizing all of those servers. So I guess I guess the lesson in there is, you're going to have to go and look at this and say, maybe I'm not the expert in here, and I need to go out and talk to the experts about this, or it's going to cost me a lot of money learning.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's the trouble. If they try to wander in without the expertise, they can kind of get burned. There's a lot to learn there. And you know what is interesting also, I think you could ask the average IT person, do you know how many hours each of your users are actually using that VDI or that published application? Because they probably don't know. And they're probably saying, they're just assuming it's all day long and so forth. And they might find that it's only a fraction of the day. So if you're building out a data center, you're certainly going to provision it for peak load. And yet, how often is that used? Is that used between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. typical weekdays? But other than that, and certainly weekends, a lot of it's sitting idle. But if you were to go into the cloud with that same math and you had your heat map of where, the real users were really using the systems, and you could fire them up when you needed them, but then pause, resume, and get rid of them and stop paying for them when you don't need them, well, you can really get some advanced, sort of productivity there on a bill that's much less than you would imagine. So that's the key. Now, you'd also talked about how do I do this with less IT costs? So, what's interesting about that is I don't know if you saw this announcement a couple of weeks ago, but it was like a $500 billion investment, in Texas to do 500,000 square feet of servers. They're going to go in for a huge AI farm. And they said, it's going to cause a lot of sort of jobs. And those jobs are going to go in for the construction. But when it's done, it's literally going to be managed by on the order of about 50 people. And so when you think about the kind of the server to IT person ratio, yesteryear, it was like 100 to 1, maybe a little more than that. And now it's 1,000 to 1 and maybe even more than that, right? So it's this dichotomy now between, sort of the expertise that you need, and where do you get that? And then the sort of volume and the cost associated with the IT headcount to deal with the infrastructure you need to drive your company. There's a lot changing there.
Yeah, there's a lot of downsides to being my age. Oh, to be 60 years old again, I'd start a new company and show everybody how it's going. But one of the upsides is I've seen this before many times. I was there long enough to go from I started out as a COBOL programmer in mainframes, okay, and that what you just described was what was going to happen to the industry when we went to this personal computer. People will be out of jobs. There's no way. No one's going to be able to do all. The best part of being, I was a young kid right then. The best part of being young there is I was able to transition. That's when I first hitched my wagon to Microsoft, and it was DOS back then. I became a DOS programmer. When the technology changes, everybody's over on the same starting foot. So, yeah, maybe there's not going to be an IT job for an on-prem guy. There's certainly going to be somebody in the AI space who, coming out of college right now, is going to be so much cheaper than I would be to do that same work, right? They're, young and single and don't have, houses with deferred maintenance. And so they can go and do those jobs for a salary that's less. There's always going to be room for them. As a matter of fact, I think this change is going to create more jobs than it takes away.
Well, that is a fine prediction there for sure. So, and that is kind of a technological shift that would influence the amount of folks that are working and contributing. There's a new shift coming, which we're going to hold off and talk about next, which is the AI shift and so forth. Okay, but now what we're going to do is we're going to head into the speed round. What do you think about that?
Let's go.
All righty, it's time for the speed round. So the speed round is where I ask you a series of questions. There's, approximately 10 questions here. And the idea in the speed round is that you're going to see the question, and then bam, that's it. Then it's time to share your response. So you don't get a lot of time to think about it. It's kind of a quick response.
Super. Can't wait. Yeah. All right.
And by the way, the first questions are the softballs, okay? They really get more interesting and spicy as we go. The first question, though, is like, what's your favorite day of the week?
Monday or Thursday. Those are the days I golf.
Okay. Excellent. I knew it would have nothing to do with a normal work week for folks. A lot of people pick Saturday, but good for you. And so that's golf on Monday and Thursday. Which days are the pickleball?
I'm not a pickleball guy. The other days would be fishing or playing guitar. I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Next time we have you on, we'll expect a solo. Oh. Second question, texting or talking?
Talking.
Beautiful. Now here, this is the third of the warm-up questions. Giving presents or receiving presents?
Giving.
Beautiful. All righty then. Now we're getting into some spice here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Way back when a a CEO of a company where I was the lead engineer said to me, you know, Kevin, if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know. And then, you know, he asked me some question about something. And I thought that was a very polite way to do that, because up until then, I had never said I don't know, because I thought I had to be the smartest guy in the room, and they'd go get rid of me and get a new smart guy in the room. So if you don't know, say you don't know.
Say you don't know, and that works, even to this day. Well done. Number 5, what's your biggest tech prediction for the next 10 years?
Okay, I'm going to go way out of line here that most of you aren't even thinking about it. Somebody, one of the big guys or somebody new you haven't heard from, is going to start buying up power companies. Electricity is what's going to run this next generation of tech, be it AI or crypto or anything else, and or even electric cars. What's holding them back is electricity, and right now, electricity is run by governments, and we all know governments are not the most efficient way of doing things. Now, I don't know how they're going to pull this off with regulations and all that other stuff, but somebody is going to pull this off. That's my prediction. And I think it'll come in the next 10 years.
That is a good prediction. In 10 years, a lot of things can happen, that's for sure. And by the way, every time they talk about putting a new data center in, it's always a question of the electrical grid. You know, where is that power coming from? And so some opportunistic company, whoever that might be, may step in and own that. That'll be very interesting to see. Number 6, Microsoft, AWS, and Google. Who will lead cloud computing by 2030?
You could say Microsoft, AWS, or Google, and at the end, my answer would be AWS. I'm actually not that familiar with the inner workings of Google, and I've had my experiences with Microsoft, and Amazon is the best way to run a company. I'm expecting big things out of them, and when they come, I'm not going to be surprised.
Well, Amazon certainly came out first, which was a little startling because I guess it was sort of based on the Amazon bookstore, and then they sold everything, and then they built a system for that, and they go, hey, let's use this for cloud infrastructure, and they made that of it. So they were out first, right?
Yeah, I know this is a speed round, but let's take a little side away to talk more about that. What actually happened was that Andy Jassy put together a document that said we could make a living doing this, Jeff, just having, reselling our computing power, especially the leftover computing power. And that's where the term elastic came from. And I would argue with anybody that Jeff Bezos is the best venture capitalist out there. He funded it, and look what it's turned into. One of the reasons I went to go work for AWS is, when they were recruiting me, they said, what are you going to go do next? And I said, probably another startup. And they said, come do it here. This is the best place. This is the best incubator in the world. So any really big, smart ideas and stuff like that, they can easily flourish at AWS. That's why I give them the lead.
Excellent. And 2030 is not that far away. So, and so we're going to talk about that more as we finish the speed round here. Definitely going to go into your time at AWS, dig deeper.
Okay.
That's good. You still have confidence in those folks. Okay. How about this one? Number 7. If you could have lunch with one tech leader, past or present, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. If I could have lunch with one tech leader, it'd have to be Elon right now. I'm just watching him, expert, rocket scientist, electric cars, trying to figure out how to make the species multi-planetary. I'd just love to be a fly on the wall and get a stream of consciousness from this man. The stuff he's doing now with Doge. Hi, I'm one of the richest dudes in the world, and it doesn't do me any good if the United States collapses. So let me work on fixing the United States so it doesn't go bankrupt. That's one smart guy I'd love to have lunch with.
Yeah, now does it feel like he's doing with Doge like what he did with Twitter?
You know what? Everyone said, oh, Twitter's going to collapse on itself. They can't survive with those little people, I think, actually, again, this speed round to cut me off. I think a lot of businesses are going to take their lead from him. And you're going to see, and I think you're already seeing it if you look online, a lot of these big companies are cutting a lot of fat out of their organizations.
They are. And that's why we're seeing a lot of folks on LinkedIn with open to work circles, on them, lasting quite some time. We'll talk about that a little more too. Well, hey, let's go to number 8, which is, hey, one book or resource every tech leader should read.
Oh, man. So I if you looked in my Kindle, I probably have 400 books on this. The one book I keep going back to, and now I'm looking over on my bookshelf to see what the name of it is, but it's by Jason Calacanis. It's on angel investing. And here's what's great about it. I read Jason's book in which he gives advice to angel investors on which entrepreneurs they should invest in. And then as an entrepreneur, I made sure I answered all the questions correctly when I talked to the VCs who had read Jason's book, who were asking me these questions. I go back to that like a encyclopedia, probably before I go and look at pitch decks for every single company that's pitching me. Excellent
no kidding.
book.
Is that 10 or 20 years old? Is it recent?
It's old. It's still absolutely valuable. Jason, I originally know him from poker, which is another one of my pastimes that I love. And, he was an early angel investor in all of the big Silicon Valley startups you've heard of, like Uber and the like. And he just put his thoughts down on paper. It was fantastic.
Well, good advice. Good advice for sure. Number 9, if you weren't in tech, what career would you have pursued?
If I wasn't, now I'm going to answer you 3, 1 realistic, 2 facetious ones. I really would like to be a guitarist in a rock band. I would like to have been a pro on the PGA Golf Tour. Anybody who's seen me golf or heard me play guitar is knowing those are the 2 facetious ones. But I contemplated being a patent attorney, getting in there in the guts of all the algorithms and then, working through that process to get them patented.
Is that something you wanted to do earlier in your career or something you still think you might have done and been successful and enjoyed?
You know what? So it came every time I retired. I was in a startup that went public as DocuCore International, and I thought about going to law school then. Then I sold RTO software to VMware. I thought about going to law school then. And now I think that opportunity passed me by. I don't believe I'm going to go to law school at this time, but maybe I'll use ChatGPT to help people get their patents in the future. I don't know.
Well, it still sounds like you've got Tuesday and Wednesday open. So
I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Well, the interesting thing about a patent attorney, though, is you're going to watch other people come up with inventions and bring those into the world benefits, and then of course they have a monetary reward. Would that be rewarding to you to facilitate?
So, true happiness comes from achievements. Accomplishments, and having a potential investor walk in the door and say, I have this idea, and then you flush it out. Because I've patented, I don't know how many patents I have. I'm, not as many as some, but, I've patented quite a few things. And I was always impressed by the attorney on the other side, flushing out my ideas and then getting it into a document that ended up passing muster. So from that other side, I could see the happiness coming from that accomplishment of taking an inventor's idea and have it come to fruition.
Yes, a lot of satisfied feelings there on either side of that. Now, number 10, what's one thing AI will never replace?
As much as you'd like to think about it, there's always going to have to be a person in there either prompting the AI or pushing it in a direction you want it to go. There's always going to have to be a subject matter expertise, somebody who knows a problem that needs to be solved with AI. They're always going to be there. Now, is there other stuff like physical type of things that they'll never do. I don't think so. I think robots could be programmed to do anything that a human can do now, except get the problem and figure out that problem needs to be solved. I think there's always going to be a place for that.
Always be a place for that. And that's the question, because when you think of AI advancing, so the intelligence and the reasoning power is always there, and is there, in many cases better than most humans. When the robotics catches up and you combine those two together, and then it's able to do so many physical tasks, you can find a large portion of the population, kind of the music stops and there's no chair for them. So they don't have an occupation. The world's got to figure out a different approach, a different lifestyle, a different sort of get up and what am I doing today sort of scenario. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, and the one thing that I've seen in everybody is how resilient they are. At being a leader, you sometimes have to make changes in the organization, which results in laying people out, reduction in force. And anybody with a soul feels bad about that. But what I really enjoy seeing is how those people bounce back and do something else. Hey, I've let a lot of people who wanted to be programmers go because, it's only a sin not to know how to program if you're a coder. Okay, you could do a billion of other things much better. Just you're not good at coding, so let's find something else for you to do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pay you a little bit of severance so you can look for that something else. A lot of them tell me they're wrong and go get jobs as coders elsewhere, and then I love nothing more than them coming back and say, look how successful I am. And others come back to me and say, thank you. I wouldn't admit it to myself. You're the really one who got me straight. And look what I'm doing now. So I'm proud of myself. So, it's going to happen. And it's been happening throughout history of, technology coming in and transforming things in which some people have to go find something else to do.
Oh, yes. And that's going to be the creative future that we have in that regard. But in an engineer, like you're talking about, whether they're a software engineer or a hardware engineer, you really have to, these days, have some experience, probably use AI on, in addition to your own abilities and so forth to create what you're creating. Now, I don't know if you remember, maybe, 10, 20 years ago, there's a movie called Spinal Tap. And in that movie, their engineers created new amplifiers for the guitar. You remember this, right?
This one goes to 11.
Yes, exactly. Well, why does it go to 11? Well, because 11 is one louder than 10. And he was trying to explain to the guy, but it's a volume knob. It doesn't matter how many notches you put on it. When it's all the way up, it's all the way up. No. This one goes to 11.
But it goes to 11. Yes.
Exactly. Well, guess what? If you ever have ridden or driven in a Tesla, the volume in that car, speaking of Elon Musk, goes to 11. And guess what? We have question number 11. It goes to 11. Describe the future of tech in one word.
One word? Describe the future of tech in one word. I'm re-asking the question to buy myself time to think of an answer to describe the future of tech in one word. And that word is going to be same. S-A-M-E. Same stuff, different day. It's, don't let it grind you down. This stuff isn't really revolutionary. It's evolutionary. It's just one after the other. I see these people that don't know how ChatGPT works and goes, oh, this is absolutely amazing. Well, you might have said that exact same thing when you saw Google for the first time. It's absolutely amazing. You might have said that when they came out with the first Encyclopedia Britannicas. Oh, this is amazing. Or the first time you went to a library. It's just the same stuff, different day. It's all building upon each other. Sorry that you put me on the spot. I couldn't think of a better word from same, but that's the point I'm trying to get across.
Well, it's better than screwed or something like that, right? We've been through a lot of transitions. You remember like growing up, there was no internet, there was no smartphone, right? And so as we came into our careers, then all of a sudden, what was it, 1994, I think I registered my first domain and first, twisted pair into the house with a full-time internet connection, 1994. Before that, there was no internet, right? And before, it was until 2007 until the first iPhone came out. So now I've got a supercomputer in my pocket. Okay, and then, in between there, Google comes out and now you can ask questions and get access to content anywhere in the world. And it's not a conversation, it's a question and an answer. So that's reasonably good. But now you get to ChatGPT and now you're not just question and answer, you're having a conversation with something. It feels like there's someone there. It feels like it's getting to know you. In fact, if you tell it all about yourself, it says memory updating and it logs all that away. And the context of your future conversations have all that associated. So it knows, it's gathering that information. It's context-aware conversation. And that's just ChatGPT, let alone all the other AI systems that are out there as well, deep research and so forth, right?
Yeah.
The actual AI systems that create content, whether it's graphical or documents or code and so forth like that. So there's a lot changing out there today. Are you catching your own experience of all this, or are you hearing people talk about it as you connect with folks?
Yeah, and so I like to keep in touch with all this stuff, and I really think the context part of Grok is the one I happen to use. It's really an upgrade upon the old Google, where each search was independent, but it's only going to get better. But let me go back and tell you why this is not something that's really all that outstanding to me. It just seems to be, according to Moore's law, now we have the room to do all this stuff. But let me take you back to 1964. You were talking about 94. Let me take you back to 64. New York World's Fair. The Room of Tomorrow or the Future Tomorrow, whatever it was, exhibit. All right. They had three things in there. Nylon carpeting. Well, carpeting used to be wool before that. Nylon. So much cheaper. All right. A dishwasher. You put your glasses and dishes into this box, close it, turn it on, out. They come out clean. Okay. And a picture phone. You pick up the phone and there is a camera, takes your picture and shows it to the person on the other side. As a matter of fact, the Jetsons, which was a cartoon about the future, made a great use of this picture phone. Well, in the World's Fair of 65, the picture phone was still in there in the future. But nylon carpeting and the dishwasher were not. Why? They were so popular, they became household items. Everybody was buying them. It wasn't the future, it was now. And that picture phone, here we are in what is essentially a picture phone right now, but it probably didn't really get popular until, the iPhone phone came out, and did the video chat that way and the Googles and all these other things like that. For someone who didn't see that in 64, this looks pretty amazing. They've been thinking about it a long time. The cats at Google, at OpenAI and everything like that, they didn't just drop onto this earth with this idea. They're using it to solve problems of the existing technologies. And we'll continue to do that, and for anybody who loses his job in AI, he's going to go sit down and hopefully he does the same as me and my co-founders from FSLogix. Gosh, this industry sucks. We should try to fix it. Identify a problem, a real one, and then get a product that fits that problem. And you're off to the races, and we'll create some new entrepreneurs.
Well, there's interesting about the lag when technology comes out and when it takes off and then when it gets fully adopted, right? If you think about 94 and that first internet connection I had with this low baud modem and so forth, building up to 2000 was the big bubble, right? That's like all these companies thought the potential of internet connectivity is going to change e-commerce and all this stuff. Crazy companies had come out and their stock prices just went ridiculous, right? And then the 2000 bubble popped popped because they weren't realizing that. Now, it took 10 or 15 years later before all that e-commerce really started pulling in the billions and even trillions of dollars. So it's like we knew it was going to be amazing. It just took longer than, the hype. So now you go into AI, right? And you go, okay, well, AI is the new technology here. Should we get all these valuations, up and then, explode again and whatever? And then it's realized in maybe 4 years, 3 years, rather than 10 or 15. Yeah. So when you look at this, if you look back, DocuSign, which is the company I worked for when I left Citrix, it took them 10 years to get 100 million users, the adoption, which is amazing, right?
That is amazing.
But if you take a look at a new company called Cursor, and they do AI created software coding and code checking and so forth. Mm-hmm. They actually got 100 million users in 1 year. So that's the first time that's ever happened. So the notion of collapsing the lag time between the initiation of the technology and the real market adoption and the ROI and the sort of impact on the economy and so forth seems to be compressing. And as those examples right there. So your experience and my experience of the past technologies and the time it took, and some things didn't even evolve, but then the compression between those, like what's your expectation now of AI and even future tech moving as fast as it is?
Yeah, so let's temper a little bit of that. All right, so one of the problems with DocuSign, and it wasn't anything to do with the technology, was you weren't allowed to buy a house using DocuSign, right? You had to sign physical documents. There were states that required physical documents. Over time, all of those barriers were conquered, right? And most of them were legislative barriers, you don't have them in with Cursor. Cursor is a bunch of programmers who already know how to access GitHub and everything else, and it's super easy for them to try it. So for that thing, it's not really apples to apples. The 100 million users for DocuSign is something to be marveled at with all the restrictions that were put upon you. It just shows you what a fantastic technology it was and is to this day. And, there's a good chance that, and I try to keep up with it. I see now, you think Cursor is good, you should see this. So the fact that you have 100 million now doesn't mean you will still have those 100 million in 5 years. It's going to be a lot of work to keep them. You're going to have to keep building upon what you have to do now. And you need 100 million guys who want to program in order to do this too. So, it helps to have its product market fit. I have these entrepreneurs coming to me that I mentor, and I say to them, let's just assume your technology works. If so, how many people will buy it? And if they go, I know of at least 50, 100 people. I'm being facetious, but no, then we're not going to invest in you. You can't support an outside investor. If you say 1 billion and I can probably get the first 100 million, in 4 years, all right, let's talk, so.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's this term called sticky, so it's like when you have an existence on-prem and you have your resources running there, it's pretty sticky. It's hard to move. It's hard to, sell off all your hardware and buy new hardware and so on. But when you get into the cloud, things aren't as sticky. You could go into this cloud and run your resources, but you could move them over to that cloud. Like you're saying, you could get 100 million users today in a year, but you might lose 50 million of those in a year as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I might push back a tiny bit on that multi-cloud strategy that you might have. Now, I know some of the big customers buy from both Amazon and Microsoft, so they can, have them pit it against each other. But you take your entire workload and you put it up in Microsoft, the first thing they're going to do is pitch you a 5-year enterprise agreement to get you the best price. So you're maybe not, those clouds are stickier than a lot of people think to get the best prices. Same is true with Amazon. They're going to talk you into buying their enterprise discount, in order for some commitments on your part, because we like to say it's elastic, in which, hey, you can use a bunch on the weekend, but then go down to a slow amount. But, those are physical devices somewhere in a data center somewhere. We call them regions at Amazon, but those are physical devices there. And if they sit idle, they don't make any money. So they really have to get you to commit to get the good price. So.
Oh yeah, they're motivated for sure to keep the CPU running and keep the billing going. That's for sure. So it's interesting that the sticky part, it isn't as easy to move between clouds today. And if that is one of the areas, maybe a startup company comes along, I don't know, and decides to make that a lot easier, more elastic. I certainly know it's like Nutanix has their NC2 offering that runs on bare metal across a couple of those clouds we talked about, and AWS and Azure, and that allows you to move VMs across as though just completely drag and drop essentially. There's some lag, but they run on the same platform, so that might help.
So VMware had something similar to that, though. Oh, you were going to get to a question, but VMware had something similar to that. Hold that thought, right? The NC2, the bare metal, vSphere on AWS, whatever it was called.
Oh, yeah.
You pay a price for that convenience. You could migrate to and that jumping would be jumping back to on-premises as well. But you pay a price for that one. You've got two hypervisors now instead of just one. And, that adds some cost to there. But it does come with some tremendous convenience. That there's that issue where now my Nutanix rep is the same guy because he's using NC2 as well as the on-prem guy's the same guy as the cloud guy. Your VMware vSphere expert is the same guy on-prem, but it does come at a cost. But yeah.
It's kind of like via FSLogix, you came in to solve a problem that Microsoft had with their file system. So when you think about it, it's like Azure and GCP and AWS are never going to have a standard interface that's the same across all of them to allow you to move things back and forth. So Nutanix comes in, VMware comes in, and they create that standard so you can run across there, but you're always going to be paying for that layer. And so that is the question, is the convenience. Now, if you're a international company and you really want to go best of breed cloud cost based on proximity to end users and so forth and costs, you might play that math game. If it gets too complicated, you definitely don't want to lose your IT staff. If there's a turnover, they won't have any idea where everything is. That gets challenging.
It does. It gets challenging because what did Mark T call it? The worldwide cloud. We'd like to think that they are all identical and we could be using them interchangeably. But beneath them are public companies that need to make a profit. So they're never going to really facilitate you bouncing off of their cloud, and bouncing onto somebody else, on a whim. They're all going to work against that, or at least I would think they should work against that to ensure that you remain their customer.
Yeah, his analogy is it's like sort of the power company. You go and take any appliance and stick it in any outlet, and you don't have to worry about where the power's coming from or if it's correct. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could take your Ethernet cable, figuratively, and plug that in and get the service you wanted across any cloud that you chose, and you didn't have to worry about which cloud it is. That's not the case. Like you said, governments own power companies, but commercially owned, hyperscale clouds are very, very different. Now, I want to shift gears with you because I want to ask you this question here, which is kind of taking this all home. Based on all this experience and this discussion, it's like, what is your advice to kids going into college today? I mean, they're not even coming out of college. They're going into college. They're trying to pick a career. 4 years of education. So 4 years from now, when they pop out the other side, they're actually sitting in a great space to go and leverage their skills, talent, youth, and energy in a world that we're heading into. What are your thoughts there?
So it's hard to determine what the new thing is for me anyway. Maybe these kids can figure it out. But you want to latch on to that. I'm going to have a hard time remembering how to pronounce his name, but Anders from Microsoft. He used to work at Borland. When he was at Borland, he wrote Pascal, right? And then he moved to to Microsoft, and that's where all the .NET came from, the C# and all of that. And I had an opportunity one time to ask him what was wrong with Pascal, right? Is C# really fixing issues that Pascal had? I was a Turbo Pascal programmer at one point. Fun piece of code that Turbo Pascal was. And he said, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's all social, right? Every 5 years, you need to come out with a new language so the kids coming out of college can then latch onto it. They're quick learners, and they're a lot cheaper than the guys with 5 years experience. You know, this whole thing about when the technology changes. So, I wouldn't sweat if I was in college right now trying to learn C++. I'd go with what the new thing is that they want. And here's the part I don't have the answer for you. Is it AI? Is it quantum computing? Probably somewhere in that space. But, if you want to learn to fly planes, go fly the fighter jets. They're the hardest. They're the hardest to get chosen for. Consequently, that's who Delta hires as pilots, the guys that the Navy said were the best. Go find out what the best and hardest to do in there, and go learn that, because people will be looking for you.
And your advice after they pick their career, what's their level of focus and interest and curiosity in AI and how that can help them in their education and career? Are you recommending they spend a lot of time there or not so much?
Well, here's what amazes me. So I went to the University of Georgia, and I come back and I speak to the entrepreneurs there. They are being taught, and one of the things the University of Georgia taught me was not only the basics, but also how to learn. That's probably why I've been able to, learn, acquire, and practice all of this information and then turn it into something useful. They're so much better now than they were when I was there. That entrepreneurs class is teaching 30 years worth of entrepreneurship to these kids in one degree. It took me all my life to learn how to work with a board of directors like you're teaching them in this semester. That's really fantastic. So I'm counting on our higher education to get out there and realize that they, to stay relevant, or have to get on top of these big technologies. All the tech schools are. And I'm counting on them to teach the proper. Those kids, for me, it excited me. My kids don't program. They were never coders. My son talks about one thing he never wants to do is get a monitor tan. He works outdoors. So, whatever it is that gets you excited and sure, I used to put in 40 hours a week for my company, but the other 40 hours a week I would be spending learning. And I couldn't do that if I wasn't excited about the technology. If you find something you're excited about, you're going to be successful with it.
Well, you know what they say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah, until you go to retire, right? So what happens?
Now you love what you do too. You fish and you golf. You love that.
Well, what the other thing is for the people like me, and I suspect you, it is what you do. It is what you are. It's not what you do. It is what you are. Just try to do the same, just less of it. So instead of working full time and, grinding out all that time trying to get, something accomplished, I pulled back, but I still kept my hand in it. I'm mentoring. I mentored a lot of people while I was AWS career-wise, how to get a promotion, what you should be doing to get promotion. And it's amazing. A bunch of them have reached out to me via LinkedIn, and I still talk to them. And then I have other people that are ex-FSLogix call me. So I get to keep my hands in it there. You were kind enough to pick my brain here, so that feels like I've done my keep my hand in it for this month. And, that's, it's one way to step away from the grind.
Well, it's great. And by the way, the experience, thanks for sharing it. It's great advice for the college kids coming out, trying to find a career, find the right school and the right classes to take with the right professors and the right AI tools. And even those that are mid-career right now that are looking at the world and figuring out what new skills they need to get and what they, what maybe they want to make a shift and go into another direction. So, and also, as you mentioned, I think you came out of the technology world and then you really grew into the managerial and the business and the commercial side of things, which is a natural progression also. So that's good. Now, before we wrap things up, any last words of advice?
Yeah, so for all you technologists out there, I was just mentoring somebody from Microsoft, somebody who just reached out to me. I had never worked with them before, wondering, should they take a managerial role? They were currently in IC. And my relevant experience is in VMware and AWS. There's one guy at executive VP level who's a technologist. The guy. So if you're the guy, keep doing that and being that technologist. All the other VPs were people managers. Right. And what is important is either to be that guy or be a force multiplier to where you can make people as good, if not better than what you are. And then you're going to have a career regardless of when the technology changes. I got obsoleted as a programmer years ago. But I really know what it took to make people good programmers and build great teams and stuff like that. And I could do that with not having to code anymore.
Beautiful. Thanks for those final words of wisdom there, Kevin. I mean, I just really want to thank you for your time. I mean, I know you're retired and busy right now, but I reached out to you to join this podcast and you said yes right away. You got your studio all set up at home. It's beautiful. So, man, thanks for sharing. Thanks for our friendship, continued friendship, and for everything you shared, all your wisdom today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you too. I'm flattered that you chose me, but more important, it was great to hang with you. And I've known you for years. And next time we're in person, I want to see if you still have that jacket with all the pockets.
That's in the Smithsonian, man. It's been retired.
Gotcha. All right, man.
If this conversation sparks something within you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your others, all sorts of other friends that you have that are on similar journeys. And until next time, rethink the game and rewrite the rules. Good luck out there. Take care. Bye-bye.